Hey everybody, Melina Boswell here. And podcast number, I don't know, 2 or 3, whatever this is, but this is the second iteration of the series or season entitled Whole and Holy. And today with me, I have my super good friend, Erin Phillips. And before we started, Erin, so we're totally winging this, and no script, no nothing. And so I was just now going to ask you before we started recording, I was going to ask you, so like, what letters do you want after your name? How do you, what title do you want? What, you know, like, how do you want me to call you? So I'm just like, oh, one of my closest, dearest friends. For me, that's who you are. And which is why it's super safe to have you here with me. But I was just, I'm going to let you introduce yourself and whatever you want to say about you, because I can say, you know, good friend, confidant, kindred spirit, total sister, so much love, so much admiration, so much respect, trust. Yeah. That's how I know you. And I know professionally, you know, you're brilliant. I watch you run board meetings like a freaking boss. And, you know, as cute as you walk in with your, you know, awesome looking self, like runner extraordinaire, unbelievable athlete, and, badass CEO, executive director. But go ahead. How would you introduce yourself?
Well, I think the titles that you gave me related to your friend, being your friend, I think those are the most honoring, honestly. Because I think the other things are just like roles that you play when you have to play, right? But to be connected the way, right? To be present and to feel that connection. I think that's powerful. So I'm honored by the way you introduced me. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, that's how I know you. Yeah. So if people are listening, you know, something struck me as we were talking, because we all know we're calling this the Melina Boswell experiment. And as I think through the experiment of Melina Boswell and whatever that embodies, and we honestly don't know where it's going or what the intention is, right? I know that my intention is to share whatever it is that I've been given with the world, you know, and I believe it's my God-given abilities that I've been, I guess, gifted, and it's terrifying. And, so as I think through the people that I wanted to have on my podcast, you're like my number one. And it struck me right now as we were just speaking that the reason I want you here is because you're part of the unpacking or the unveiling of what the Melina Boswell experiment is. I mean, it truly is an experiment.
Wow.
And so I trust you because I'm like, well, we don't know what we're going to talk about. And then we just start talking and I'm like, this is actually it. Yeah. Like how we have these deep talks and we explore ideas and can be super honest with each other. And my favorite thing about you is that you ask hard questions.
Well, that's my favorite thing about you too. I mean, it's funny because you're the one. So I've always felt safe in large roles, right? In large roles that take up a lot of space and take up a lot of brain power. They are what helped me feel safe in the world. And a few years ago, as you were going through a metamorphosis, right? I followed along, watching and experiencing significant change in my life too. And you were the one that I went to first. And I just felt it in my spirit. You got to go to Melina because you've always been, right? Like you don't get stuck by the constraints that we see. And I needed to see my life differently and I couldn't. It's not something I'm practiced at. And so I went to my resource, which in that moment was you, and imagined a different life for myself and felt brave enough and confident enough to try it. And it worked.
Share what that was.
Well, I mean, so we talk about asking the hard questions, right? And challenging. So, I asked Melina if she'd meet with me to talk about this. I just knew that where I was professionally wasn't right. I knew I loved my work. I loved the people I worked with. I loved the mission and the calling, you know, helping people of all walks have the healthcare and access to healthcare that they needed and that everyone deserves, in my opinion. And I felt like that was very fulfilling, but it was no longer congruent to who I was inside. And I couldn't figure out why. I couldn't figure out what wasn't matching. I couldn't figure out why over time I was really just facing what I now know is just clinical burnout, right? Like why I was just so exhausted by my my work and how I evaluated my worth. And
you were in a high level executive position.
Yeah. A lot of pressure, right? A lot of pressure. And I think because you and I've talked about this too, like we become quite used to that. We're adrenaline junkies. And so I'm drawn to that, right? Like I'm drawn to the craziest challenging position, rebuilding organizations and doing things that people just can't think, can't imagine for themselves. And I love it. It's a high. But I was really I was facing what felt like incredible failure, not because on the outside it was failing, but because I no longer felt like this is where I should be. And I didn't know how to process that. And so I went to you and we met in this
dive bar,
total dive bar. There were 2 other people there drinking at 1 p.m, right? And they just kept trying to give us chicken wings and sell us anything.
Exactly. We were just a little whiskey, please.
Yeah. No. And we had this conversation and it sounded something like, I know it's irresponsible for me to leave my job. Mm-hmm. I know that it's irresponsible for me to imagine doing anything different. And you were like, bullshit. I'm calling you on that, because it is not your responsibility to continue doing that thing. And through our conversation, I realized that's what I was hiding behind, right? Because it's what I'd known and it's what was safe. And even though it felt like torture at the time, it was the constraint or the equation that I just had known. And so you challenged me to believe. So we talked through, what would feel like life and what would feel like what would life feel like if it, you could imagine a different kind of scenario. And we just talked through those things. And as we left, I felt like I had the next step before me. I felt like at least I could frame the questions that my heart and my mind were already processing that my brain, right?
Mm-hmm.
My logical side hadn't caught up with.
Mm-hmm.
And so, so I stepped out and I decided I needed to heal from this burnout, this place of burnout. And I stepped out. So we met in April and by August I had it all lined out. I stepped out into full-time consulting and had all the contracts I needed and just all of the, all the things that Melina's like, why don't you believe? I mean, you're someone that people would bet on. Why do you not believe? And it just really, so you asked the hard questions in that moment in my life. And I think it set me on a very different trajectory. And I have a different belief in myself. I definitely don't believe that I can, do anything, but I do think I can learn anything, right? I'm willing to work hard and I'm willing to take risks. And I see myself as more than I think I did before. So anyway, so you are that one in my life as well. So that's why I love these conversations.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
It is funny. There's not a lot of small chit chat between you and me.
There's
never oh, did you see that Taylor Swift won album of the year? We don't even talk about that. It's dumb shit. We don't even care. It's we haven't talked for, I don't know, a couple weeks or whatever, maybe a month, 2 months, whatever it is. And then it's and we get on the phone. Hey, so how's it going? Oh, I'm so busy. Blah, blah, blah. And then so you asked me, I think this was one of the most, this is so typical of you and me. We get on the phone for 5 minutes. And then I said, it was because it was coming up on the anniversary of Dave's death.
Yeah. And
it was the 3rd anniversary. And you asked, how does that feel? And here's what you asked me. It was such a good question because you said, how does it feel in your body? That's what you asked me. And I was like, and I know it took me a minute to really process and ask myself, that's a hard question.
It is.
So different than, it was how does it feel in your body? Because your body doesn't lie.
Right. Right. Our tissues remember.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so I said, I feel like I'm literally torn between freedom and terror. Mm-hmm. That's how it feels. Mm-hmm. Freedom and terror, which are clearly polar opposites. So am I schizophrenic? Is that I was like, how do I balance terror and freedom? And how can I even put those both in the same in the same emotion, right? And then I think I was saying maybe it's the terror of being entirely free,
right,
that I'm experiencing right now, and what does that actually look like? What does terror feel like? And we started talking about the physiological feeling, and then maybe changing the language, how we describe it. Maybe terror is exhilaration.
Right. Terror is the thing that keeps you safe, right? But like what feels like terror can also be, excitement, anticipation. I mean, fear of failure, right? Like, fear of, I feel like I have something unique to give the world, but what if others don't want it, right? What if it's not the right thing? Yeah.
Totally.
I mean, all of that. Yeah.
And like, what is it?
Yeah.
Don't even know. Like, what's the goal, which is interesting as we were talking about seasons or whatever of the Melina Boswell experiment, right? And maybe it's whole and holy. And I was sharing with you how Nathan came on, and Nathan, and how we talked through, what it looks like to be whole and holy. And of course he, Mr. Poop Skittles took it back to, the original language.
Yes.
Right. And
the
how it sounded. Yes.
Yeah.
You know, and so how actually the word was holy. It was correct. It's a place of peace. It's a place of, there's a whole lot around that. But I think the thing that for me in terms of whole and holy and the idea is there's several parts to it. Mm-hmm. So it's the emotional, it's the physical, the physical parts of us wanting to be healthy, needing to be healthy.
Yeah.
Right. It's also for me professionally. So, which is funny because, you and I talking about our Enneagram numbers and how I'm a 3, a 3-4, and you're a 3-2.
Yeah.
And how there isn't that many 3s. And I don't know if I told you this, but I heard somebody say, we live in a 3 country.
Yeah, we do. Our culture celebrates, right? The charisma.
Yes.
Yeah. The salesmanship of a 3. Yeah.
Yes.
It
Which
does.
can be super dangerous for you and me.
Absolutely.
That's why we hit burnout.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We're definitely a culture, not of rest and boundaries, right? But of work and produce and achieve and often without a real goal in mind, right? Yeah.
I think one of the things that like really pierced my heart was through my sort of metamorphosis and the coming out of me and who I am. And I told you I thought I was an Enneagram 9. I was absolutely convinced of it. And you said you were shocked. You were shocked at that. That's so funny because you would never see me as a 9.
No, I can actually. So there's elements of a 9 where everyone thinks the 9 is their best friend, right? Because the 9 is so good at welcoming and making someone feel like they're important and right. Like a 9 is so good at negotiating the peace. It is so good. Yeah. And a 9 can also retreat and create boundary and go explore and right, like, but in a separateness, in a space that is
alone,
where they recover. I'm married to a 9, a precious 9 who thinks through all kinds of things and has the most sensitive of hearts, right?
Yes.
And that can create, that can manifest in lots of protective moats, right? Like moats around the castle, but it can also be a constant, one of my dear friends, Stacy, she's a 9 and she is just constantly negotiating the peace. She wants to make sure everyone feels good and not even that there's a lot of tumult around her, but she just goes, nobody can be at odds and nobody can be uncomfortable and they're right. And so it's very much a, you could either be a retreating or a pouring out kind of posture. Right. And so, no, I could definitely see those, but it's funny when you describe then your realization of the 3 and under stress where we go is to a 9. That completely makes sense. And that was a very, you were you were using the tools available to you to survive, right? What was the unwinding of what you knew to be your life? So
yeah, the undoing, entirely undoing, you know, and yeah, negotiating the peace, because the first time I did the test, it was like 6 months after Dave died. And so I think I was absolutely negotiating the peace for everybody.
Yeah.
For everybody.
Yeah.
Right. My kids, my grandkids, my company, my club members, you know, a lot of people.
Yeah.
That I needed to make sure everybody was okay.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And here's the reality. I think that I made sure everybody was okay except for me.
Yes. Well, you could see it at the funeral, honestly. You stood up there in your beautiful purple dress and you made sure everyone else felt good and challenged to do something amazing in their life. It was very much, I mean, now, you know, in hindsight as a 3, it's a very outward focused. This is what we do to manage our own emotions. This is what we do to manage the void and fear in us, right? Is we go very outward focused. And it was a beautiful moment. I remember being struck by your strength in that moment to speak with such presence. You know, you spoke with such presence, but that is the strength that we know to be Melina. But you're right. I mean, to think about your own healing and the time and space that you need to do that. If you're so busy, and we will allow ourselves to be very busy to avoid the feeling, right?
Right.
We are active and feeling repressed, right? We lean towards action. That's what's safer for us. And so
that's the crazy thing. So now I recognize that.
Right.
Whereas the 9, honestly, in stress, looks a lot better. Actually, they all, you know, the way we handle stress is super, it always looks good. That's why I was bringing up that we live in a 3 country.
right.
Because it's very acceptable.
Right. Right.
It's impressive.
Yes. Oh yeah. I mean, we definitely celebrate busyness and
And success and, you know, all
and making
those
it look
things.
good, making
Right.
it look easy. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And truly, I was, I guess, falling apart and didn't really know it.
Amen. I know. I see you.
Yeah, I know. In retrospect, when I think back to our conversation, I obviously could see you.
Yeah.
The reason I was able to, you know, give you whatever insight I had, it was because it was entirely me. We're a mirror.
Yeah.
And aren't we all a mirror? I mean, ultimately.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that is where I think back to that post that you put out on Facebook to see what people would respond to with whole and holy. And I think about a lot of the responses that I read. And when I thought through my own response, my own answer, you know, I think the holiness does come from, it isn't some unattainable measurement of goodness that someone else has. I think the holiness is people being people and being human and being real with each other. And it's like a posture. It's a posture of a humility and an honestness and a vulnerability. And I think those are moments that bring holiness. Those are the moments when you can take a deep breath and not feel impeded. Those are the moments when you can feel the sand underneath your feet and watch the waves crash in a present place. Like those kinds of moments are holy because they don't happen that often. But when we can bring that, right? Like I feel like that is holiness. And, you know, so others might call that, you know, a spirit infused moment, or those, you know, there's all kinds of language and there's all kinds of trappings.
Enlightenment, maybe.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But like that peace where you float, right?
Yes.
I think it's incredibly hard to be whole, but that is the journey. And where a 3 would struggle with that, it's like, but where will I know I've like, where's the line where I know I've done it?
Right. Do I get the blue ribbon now?
Exactly. I laughed. I saw this meme the other day and it was like, it was talking about a 3 and it was like, my therapist said that I was really good at therapy and I was really proud of myself about it. And I was cracking up because I was like, I could so relate with
Me too.
My therapist said I was good at therapy. And it's just so like,
and I felt super awesome.
oh my
like,
God,
I'm winning.
I am winning at therapy. That's exactly right. And I don't know who I'm winning against, right? Like I don't wish harm to anyone else, but like I did therapy really well. It makes me laugh. But like I feel like that. So whole is hard, I think, for a 3 because we don't have ways to measure like, right, the progress or how our evolution or right. But I think when we can continue to just be super real with each other, I feel like it's a posture and it isn't something to be achieved, which is like, it's the antithesis of what a 3 wants, which is exactly why it's right. You know what I mean? Like the submission, like of your walk, like this, just the submission, not to achieve it, not to finish it, not to conquer it, but to submit to it. Right. I think that's the process of seeking holiness. And then what's on the other side? Who are we to know or right? Like,
and possibly it doesn't even matter.
Absolutely.
And I think for us, that's the hardest part because we are looking to measure everything all the time, you know? And I think that's why we hit burnout.
Yeah.
Right. Because we never arrive.
Yeah.
We like never actually get there because we're like, we take the accolades. Oh, that was great. Good accomplishment. And we're like, next.
Right. There's always more to do. There's always more good to be done. And there's, it's never ending. So then what if I just sit with my kids instead? Right. Like what if someone else just takes it on and I just sit and be in this moment, it's
not easy.
It's really hard.
It's interesting when I started making, I think I operated as a 9 and was making sure everybody was okay. And then I think I did that for, I don't know, maybe the first year and a half, probably. And then honestly, in the second, like maybe 18 months after, I started to, I guess I couldn't, it was me no longer being able to make sure everybody was okay.
Yeah.
Because and at some point I had to deal with me and my grief. And rather than, it's, I'm not proud to say, but rather than saying that to somebody or admitting it to myself, I started doing things to, I think, numb the pain more.
Right.
And so that's when I started to show it more as a 3. Right. So if I'm a 9 under stress, and that is making peace for everybody, then at some point I had to deal with me because I just kept on, everywhere I went, there I was.
Yeah.
So I couldn't run from myself any longer. And so then I think I started to step into like who I really am, which was, I'll just tell you, it was super like jacked up. Like it wasn't attractive. It was, I mean, I think it's beautiful and perfect. I don't really, but I mean, the part of me that wants to always look good.
Right.
Feels like it was ugly.
Yeah. Yeah. Even real feels ugly to a 3, right? Because it's not controlled. Yeah.
It was all real. And it was, and I can look at it now and go, I mean, I didn't hurt anybody. So what in the fuck am I afraid of?
Right.
Looking good.
Right. Yeah. Looking good or capable or together or reliable or
strong.
Yeah. Any of those things.
All those things that really, as a 3, make me, like an unhealthy 3. Mm-hmm. It's almost like it's interesting. I don't know if this is true, but I feel like I was operating in unhealthy or actually stress-induced 9, like major stress, trauma, living with trauma,
yes,
showing up as a 9, taking care of the people that I love, and then being forced to deal with me. So then I begin to settle in as a 3, which I don't even know any of this.
It's just what you're feeling.
It's just what's happening.
Yeah.
And I can now look back on it and go, oh, that's what was happening.
Yeah.
I didn't see it, but now I do. And now I go, oh my gosh. And so operating my company the way that I, always have began to no longer be okay with me.
It didn't fit anymore.
Yeah. Sound familiar?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. How do you feel like knowing or exploring some of these ideas, understanding you might not feel like you know them, but exploring some of these ideas and maybe putting words to it, how did it change your experience? How did it make you feel to think through it in the terms of a 9 and now a 3 and Does it change the experience for you?
It does. Here's the truth. Because a 9, operating as a 9 is, I think, more pleasant for people around you.
3s can be intense. Yeah.
3s can be unbelievably intense.
Yeah.
And we can be difficult.
Yeah.
And everybody likes me as a 9.
Of course.
They all like it.
Yeah.
Because I'm making sure everybody else is okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so there's been this battle of me coming out of my 9-ness and starting to walk in my 3-ness, and the people that are closest to me saying, she's lost her mind.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So I experienced a lot of that being a 3-2 wing, because the 2 is the helper, right? And so, and the 4 is really more of an emotionally centered guide. The 3 really struggles with understanding and leaning towards emotion. It's just scary. It's easier and more efficient to work, to right, to just
Totally. Create stuff.
Yeah.
Build,
and
create.
Yeah. So it is interesting. So you bring up like what I now, am exploring for myself, like, but boundaries and codependency, right?
Yes.
And that can affect any number, of course, but that, I think, especially for a 3 and a 3-2, the boundaries of the helper, right, are very, it's how my personal brand, it's how I derive my security and safety in this world, is if I can do well enough and you believe that I'm capable enough, then you'll find value in me and love me. But if you really knew what was inside, you wouldn't want me. And so that's like my core fear, right? Yeah. And so that, it's interesting.
Yeah, me too.
I'm always curious if folks, does it help to have words to describe these things? Does it help? Like, how does it help? Does it help you see it differently, or does it help you move from one thing to the next, or does it help you just understand what happened in the past? I'm always just curious, like how it helps, if it does, how it does.
Yeah, I think it does, because for me, I think I, in moving from stress to, in my 9-ness and then into my 3, I think I can say the unhealthy 3, like not knowing that that's what it was, but it was almost like fighting. And I think with me having a 4 wing, which is my, the individualist.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And seriously fighting for my uniqueness, my individualism, my, the way I like quirky things and quirky people, and the more different, the better,
Yeah.
And almost fighting for that when people around me don't understand, because I've been showing up for them as a 9. I've been showing up as the peacemaker for everybody. And now I'm like, I don't care if you're at peace. Sorry, bye. Like that.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean. Not attractive.
Yeah.
Do you see?
Yeah.
It looks selfish. It looks crazy. It looks scary for the people around me.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they don't know.
But what else does it look like? What else could it look like? Could it look like, oh, she has an opinion about this? Or is there a way to also see what is happening? Because I understand that voice that says it's all ugly, but I don't know. I'm impressed. Just recently, something I was reading, and then I heard a podcast yesterday the 3 was doing, and it is interesting. I also think because we are our own worst critics, we often interpret for others how they're seeing things.
Oh,
right.
Oh,
and others, they may or may not be seeing it that way. They may not be even thinking about us, but we're so worried about, right? Like we can be not consumed by, but we can definitely be driven by wanting to make sure that we are seen in the light that we see ourselves, yes. Right? Or at least covering up our shady spots, right? So, but I wonder if there are women around you who go, oh, oh, look, she set a boundary, right? Like, or, oh, look, that's how she handled that conflict. Interesting. You know what I mean? Where we think that what we do, I don't know. I just wonder if there are other ways to look at it. If maybe.
I think there is, clearly, like deep down, I know that's right.
Yeah.
I know the boundary setting is right.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it's without a lot of conflict and a lot of pain. And also,
absolutely.
I think that's a really good question, because I think that, you know, people are going to, you train them, right? We train them on how to respond to us.
Yes.
And if I've been showing up in a certain way since I've known you, or, you know, for most of our relationship, and now I'm showing up very differently, and I put words around it, like I hit burnout. I hit, you know, which is all true. Yes. And I think, you know, I can see why I hit burnout, because I was operating in something that isn't me.
Right.
You know, trying
Absolutely.
to take care of everybody else, you know, making sure everybody else is at peace. And then almost like the way I would describe the way I felt, and I might have said this to you, I said, I feel like I'm like Macaulay Culkin in Home Alone. Like, like I just want to be alone, and I want to run through the house with, like, you know, and do everything wrong. And like, you know, like, do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like run around and skate inside the house and take the whipped cream and shove it in my mouth and run and be naked and, you know, like, and not care. Right. Just not care. Cause that's almost like the breaking out of operating in a way that isn't me. Maybe just deciding that the stressful situation just doesn't work anymore. Yeah. Right? You're operating like somebody that isn't you. Yeah. That is incredible. You know, I think probably the most shocking thing to me was that, because I thought, well, maybe your number changes. Maybe your Enneagram number changes over, you know, but that's not true. It's you are who you always are. Right.
So there's this notion of subtypes too. So subtype, you could be self-preservation, sexual, or social, and that does change. So that you can lean, we're a mix of them, but you know, I am a 3 with a 2 wing who has operated as a self-preservation 3 for a long time. And, you know, you do that when you're, you do that because the time requires that of you, but then you can shift into social or sexual, and sexual isn't like a sex fiend. Sexual is like really gravitating towards like one-on-one relationships and true connection. Right. And social is like, the just needing a lot of social interaction, wanting different stimuli, different kinds of experiences. And there's lots more that obviously more educated people about it can talk about than me, but it is interesting because it creates all these dynamics. It's what we lean on in the tools that we pull out of our tool chest, right? And sometimes the tool fits the job, but sometimes the tool is mismatched to the job. It's just our favorite tool. You know what I mean? Like, it's a very well-worn path. I'm quad dominant. It's a very strong muscle. Yes. And it's not the muscle for the job, you know? So it's interesting.
I love that. Yeah, I love that.
It's interesting how we operate and how we feel comfortable operating, and how, yes, definitely how others see us. And I just wonder, the only reason I bring up, are there other ways to see it, is so that you can be kindest to yourself while you are allowing this metamorphosis. Because the more grace, which is how you live in front of all these people anyway, right? You never promise to be perfect.
No.
But the more grace you can give yourself to continue to evolve and emerge, right? Because we will kick our own ass every time. Far more than, I mean, honestly, they could take everything from us and we'd still find a way to be meaner to ourselves.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely true. Absolutely true.
So that's why I bring that up, because I know that it's a great risk when a founder goes through the kind of change you have, and you start to change how business is done, or the expectation, or how you want to relate with people in your own personal life. And there's a lot at stake there. You know, it's like a pastor of a church, right? Yeah. Like, there's nothing that's kind of, people don't imagine anything's really off limits, right? Everything's available to them.
Yeah.
And it's quite healthy for you to put up boundaries and decide how you're able to live. I mean, your circumstances have changed. Your resource and your it's changed. And so for you to renegotiate that, I commend you. You're courageous the way you're facing the thing that has to be faced anyway. You know?
I don't know that thank you. Thank you. You know, as you're speaking, you know, what's happening for me is, you know, this is what the Melina Boswell experiment is. It is just me probably processing, you know, my entire life, which has been ridiculous. I mean, it could be 19 Netflix series, no joke. Right. And people would watch because it's such a shit show, you know, and me fighting my inclination to mask it and to just keep building a business and make more money and get really good at this. And then just be like, screw it. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to check out and, you know, I'm going to be a developer.
Right.
I'm just going to develop land because that is, you know, something that's safe and nobody, and I can hide.
Yes. Yeah.
Nobody gets to see me.
Absolutely.
Doesn't really matter. And then I know that that's not what I'm supposed to do. Maybe not develop land. That's something. But I think that the experiment is me just living it out loud.
Absolutely.
And I don't think I have fully embraced, you know, what's happened to me in the last 3 years. And I don't want to position myself as a victim that something happened to me, but something happened to my person.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes.
And
it happened to you too. You can't gloss over that.
Right.
It also, yes, happened to your person, but it happened to you. And that sometimes is the hardest thing for us to really sit in. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. As Amir and Spoon are going through and you know, we have these things and we have this little group chat, right? And so it's, you're going to do this and you're going to do this. And then Amir sends me things to do. And I said to him in the very beginning, hey, like, you're going to have to hold me accountable. I'm giving you permission, hold me accountable. And so he tries to hold me accountable and I literally blow him off because he's so precious. And Spoon just gets mad at me, rolls her eyes. No, she does a good job at still being there, kind of being my rock, being my, you know, my solid wall right there.
Yep.
And, but I guess it was last week, you know, Amir in his precious nature, you know, we sat down together, the three of us. And so he was just, you know, chatting about, you know, so what are we thinking? Where are we going? And I was like, is this you holding me accountable? Is that what's happening right now? Because I'm trying to understand. What is this meeting about? You know, just tell me what the hell. What are you saying to me? And he's like, yeah, that's what it is. And he's like, you know, I said, I'm having to tell them how to manage me.
Yeah.
How to handle me.
Yeah.
And here's the question Amir asked me, like, what's wrong or what's missing? And what can I do? And like, why? Like, do you really want to do this? That was Spoon. Are you sure you really want to do this? Which of course for me is like, oh, challenge me. I'm up for the challenge. Yeah. Oh, I love to be challenged. Yes, I accept a challenge always. So, but I just said, here's the ickiest truth and probably the most difficult thing, which is why I started to get very emotional, is that I am experiencing the most insecure time of my life than I've ever experienced.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
a feeling of not living in my accomplishments.
Right.
And that is super difficult because, well, if my biggest fear is I have to feel valued, and right now I don't feel valued.
Yeah.
And so really, why does anybody want to listen to this stupid podcast?
Right.
Who gives a shit? Who cares about the experiment of Melina? Who gives a shit? You know, that's the truth. That's what I'm the most afraid of. And so I said to them, I am scared to death of that. I don't feel good enough.
Yeah.
And so I think what I need is for you to maybe give me small bites right now, little things to do and force me to, you know, and somehow I managed to double book myself this morning, like so typical of me, you know, like I just didn't have something on my calendar that should have been on my calendar. It just didn't get there. I don't know how it didn't get there. I like to blame Spoon because, but
that's easy for a 3.
That's so easy for a 3. You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, but I didn't put it on my calendar, right? There was and so it just, and I wonder to myself, is that just me avoiding, like not even knowingly avoiding what's really happening for me? And this feeling of, am I going to go through this and process this entire scary journey out loud?
Right.
Is that what I'm doing right now?
Well, I mean, so it's interesting. So you have the choice. Mm-hmm. You have the ability to choose how you're going to do this. And you have the ability to choose to submit to where the journey is taking you or to fight it, right? There's Bella.
And Bella's telling me, surrender, right, Belle? Or are you saying, run, go build a company. Okay.
But it is so interesting. In this podcast that I was listening to, they were talking about how 2 3s in a relationship can be, and this relates, but how 2 3s in a relationship can be so people pleasing that they could stay in a very toxic relationship and do the worst things possible to each other because neither of them are willing to say, I'm out. Right. So like 2 3s as people pleasers can stay in and just blow the shit out of their lives, right? Just blow it all up because they're not willing to do this one thing. And so it's interesting. I say like you have the choice because you can live it out loud. You absolutely can. And nobody can tell you that that's right or wrong. But you could also continue to fight parts of the journey and blow shit up along the way, right? Because maybe it's just too hard to face this one thing, right? Like, and so what is the outcome that you would hope for, right? Is the outcome to be more real? Is the outcome to be more whole? Is the outcome to be more healed? Well, if it's healed, for example, right, then it's going to get messy. And if this is how you do it, I'll tell you, everyone is fascinated by how others are managing their own shit. Do you know what I mean? Like, and if you're putting this out into the universe and you're putting a real conversation out and it finds someone and helps them, then if you feel compelled to do it, then who's to say, right? Who's to say? But if you're afraid of living this journey out loud, or you're afraid of blowing up your world because you're, not ready to face what you want to do. I'm not saying that's the case, but I mean, these are all questions so the guru in my life, right? Diana, she always asks me the right questions. Like, how does it feel in your body is a regular question she asks me. That's the only way, because I would never ask my body how I feel first, right? Like, I don't know until I'm crumbling, right? Like, I don't know until I have the flu and a double ear infection, right? Like how my body's feeling. So, but she's taught me this. And so, this idea that given 2 choices, and you can really feel in your body, and I've found it to be fascinatingly true, right? But like you can feel in your body, like one choice might feel like when we were sitting in that bar and you were like, but what if? And I'm like, oh dear God, every cell in my body was aching for the what if, right?
Yes.
So one feels restrictive, one feels burdensome, one feels like it might snuff out your light, right? And one feels like, well, what if? One feels expansive. One feels, and one question she asked me recently, one feels like you're going to step into the arena, right? So that Teddy Roosevelt quote about, you cannot throw stones at the guy in the arena because he's the one doing the work. So one feels like it's the arena. And sometimes you can feel it in your bones, which is which. And sometimes it's not so clear. But when she's continually challenging me, check in with your body, because we often have that wisdom in us. And we as 3s have silenced that in order to survive whatever in our lives helped make us and perfect the 3 in us, right? Yes. And so it's a tool that we needed to survive, but is it a tool any longer? Do we still need that tool? Or Can we now? And maybe it just feels so freaking terrible because checking with our body feels so foreign.
Yes.
All of these new things just could feel so new, and new is uncomfortable, right? New
especially
is
for us.
unpracticed. Absolutely.
Yes.
Who we want to be good at it the first time.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So it's, you know, all of those things just make it like extra fun to watch a 3 kind of unwind.
Unwind. That's good rather than unravel or blow up.
Either way. But yeah, I mean, because really the way I have tried to learn how to hold my unraveling with open hands and not believe I'm falling apart. So this bend and not break concept, which I could tell you all kinds of stories about how I've broken in my world, right? But this bend and not break concept, which is so hard for a 3, because you said the other, like, I hate to be a this or that. Like, I hate to be a, but it's actually how we operate.
I know.
It's actually the way that's safest for us. If I'm not producing, then I'm doing this, but it's much more measurable, right? Where you might actually feel a little bit of that tear because the 4 also loves to swim in, right? In like that creative, juicy space in between and like challenge boundary, right? So there's this beautiful, like not a tension, but like this beautiful mix, right? In a 3-4. But holding the unraveling in open hands for me is why I would say the unwinding, because it's not going to kill me, right? And that's what I've learned is this might feel like absolute terror. It's not going to kill me, right? And there were times that I myself wanted to die, but this itself won't kill me. And so while it feels like unraveling, it is unwinding, but I'll still be here, right?
Yes.
And so that's why, you know, sometimes I have to intentionally choose those words, because it absolutely feels like death, because it is a death. It's a death of a belief. It's a death of a way of being. It's a death of a way of relating with others, right? And
yeah, how do you, it's like, how do you, when everything that it's this idea, it's just now kind of coming to me. It's this idea of identity. I guess the 3s were super big on identity.
We are.
Right? Which is, or image, probably more appropriate. We'd prefer to stay out of identity and get into image, right?
Well, I think, again, depending on your subtype, but absolutely. 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 Identity is safe. I mean, I would be your hype woman any day, but I would never, I'm not the 3, and there are 3s, and I'm not the 3 who gravitates to the front of the stage with the mic, but I will make sure that you are set up, and I will help you think through all the, like, do you know what I mean? But like,
totally.
That's why it's beautiful, because there's all kinds of ways to be a 3. You know what I mean?
Totally.
But yes, so you were talking about identity and image. It's true. Yeah. I do want to be seen as capable, though. 100%. Right? Like that's where my image really.
Yeah. I think what I realized is that, you know, even in building NWAC, building the company, from the very beginning, my 3-ness is definitely the thing, you know, and Dave was an 8, total 8, right? And so, that is what my 3-4, I can see how I was able to build the company, you know, and even though in many ways Dave was the front runner, in front, it was always me behind the scenes that had the ideas that pushed this, that pushed that. And Dave would always say, you know, Melina made me a CEO. I was never a CEO. Right. And so now I'm CEO.
Yeah.
And it's entirely different. So what it looks like to me is, I'm realizing that my 3-4 and who I am did build the company. And I don't need to be afraid of that.
That's right.
And I have to now deconstruct the way I built it, because based on the circumstances and based on the fact that I was married to an 8, right, which is the challenger, I had to definitely, my role as a 3 was was very different. Right?
Yes.
Am I making sense?
No, absolutely.
So it's like deconstructing that now.
Absolutely.
But not really.
Yeah.
But kinda.
Totally. Well, totally. So Mark, my husband, and I, we talk about like puzzle pieces. So Dave's shape allowed you, when you came together and you build a business together, right?
Yeah.
Your shape is relative to his shape
100%.
and to the shapes around you, right?
Right.
And exactly. And now you're kind of renegotiating what it looks like. But I agree, you don't have to be afraid because you were able to see before, you were able to read, you read the industry, you read the room, and you created a business that is heart forward and cares for people and wants to bring out the best in people. And I think that is the beautiful mix between a 3 and a 4, right? Like that. And you will have, as you continue to explore, right? Like what you want and how you want to interact with this now, right? Like you'll continue to figure out what your leadership will look like. But if it feels like shit, it makes sense. A therapist tell me that, right?
That's
like
so good.
It makes sense.
So helpful.
Because it's so hard. What you're doing is not easy. And to anyone who wants to reduce what you're doing into anything else, tell them to get into the arena, right? Like they're not in the arena. So, and it doesn't matter what they think, right? Like in the end, this is your journey. And the shitty part, I have this posted on my treadmill, like no one can do the work for you. Like really no one can, right? So terror, complete freedom, right? Alone.
Yes.
Yeah. But it makes sense. It's hard shit.
It is.
Yeah.
It really is. And I think the biggest thing for me is that it is just the journey, that there is no arrival, we don't arrive, right? We arrive, I think, when we die.
Yeah. Right.
Right. And until then,
yeah,
we're just growing and figuring it out as we go. And I guess at the end of the day, the thing that I can't ever get away from is, when you were talking about submitting to the process or, not, at the end of the day, what I can't ever live with is not being a contribution to people. And even if it is only 5, right? So I know that's what I'm called to do.
Yeah.
Which is annoying.
Wouldn't it be easier to, Mark and I laugh at that all the time. It'd be easier to just like can I just have a job and
Seriously.
like take my son to baseball and like,
just shrink up.
Why do I pick the hard way?
Right. It's like shrinking.
And that doesn't mean that anyone who faces that circumstance has an easy life either. I don't mean to make it say that, but like for me, yeah. Why do it feels like I just always pick the hard way. I don't.
Right. There's 2 roads, and one has these big giant boulders and rocks and glass and splinters. And then the other one is like, soft sand.
And like, that's a challenge.
Yeah. I think, yeah. It's funny, Erin, let me ask you this, because I say this, and it's so funny. I ask this question a lot of people, and I'm starting to ask because I realize not everybody thinks the way I do. But like when I walk into the gym and I'm going to get on a row or I'm going to get on a treadmill, I always look at who I think is the healthiest, like who's going to be the best runner, who's going to be the best rower. And that's who I want to get next to.
So you can challenge yourself against them. Yeah.
Yes. And it's not because I want to beat them. Right. It isn't that I want to make them better. It's because I know that that'll force me to be my best.
Yeah.
It will automatically challenge me to be my very best. And I always thought that's how everybody sees it. And and I realized, no.
But isn't that funny? That is the epitome of a 3. We'll make a challenge out of anything. Yeah. Like, oh, you make the best peanut butter and jelly sandwich? Watch out. Look, I use
every
gourmet almond butter. Like, we make a challenge out of anything.
Everything. It's so horrible.
It's so funny.
But so funny. So you get that, right?
I totally do.
Oh yeah. I was talking
to
somebody, a friend, and he said, no, I go next to what I know is the slowest person because I feel better about myself.
Isn't that funny? So I think it manifests in different ways. Definitely. It does. But it is so funny. I laughed out loud with the girl who thought her therapist said she did really well there. Like I totally relate with that. I really was transparent today. That was, I did really good. Like anything, you know what I mean? Like,
well done.
It's ridiculous.
Yep.
It's really
valuable.
funny. Yeah, it's really funny.
It is hilarious.
Well, I'm curious in this undoing, if you can look back and identify anything that you felt like you submitted to well. So I don't ask like overcame, right? Or conquered, but like, what do you think you have submitted to well?
This freaking podcast.
You think so?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
This is the scariest thing I've ever done in my life. The most terrifying. So unbelievably uncomfortable for me and yet so unbelievably right. And that's the tension for me.
Yeah. So then keep going.
Yeah.
It'll take its form, you know? No one is good at the thing at first, right? It'll take its form. It'll be what it'll be. It'll become what it should become.
Yeah, I'm sure of that.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna commit to walking it out.
Yeah.
That's all I can do right now is just walk it out until, I don't feel like I'm supposed to, but I literally know I can't not do it.
I love it. Well, you felt that way about the book, and look, now you're doing a podcast, right?
Oh, you know that the book is going to be the podcast is going to be the thing that makes me write the book.
Yeah.
Because this is what is going to get me there.
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, I get that.
So I know that I know that I have to write the book. There's no doubt in my mind. And I I definitely feel a sense of, gotta do it. I'm like, any day, and I guess that's the, I don't know. I mean, are you stubborn?
Yeah, Mark would tell you, yeah.
So I'm just wondering, because I don't know that I read that about threes, but then I wonder, sometimes I just dig my heels in.
Yeah. Yeah.
I fight it. And I am my own worst enemy. And the reason I fight it is not because I don't want to do the work. It's because I just don't think that there's any real value. Like who wants to hear it? Who wants to read it?
Yeah.
That's the humiliating part for me, if I'm being completely honest.
Absolutely. I would imagine if you had a book full of, or a room full of authors, that you might hear that from many others too. Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Keep being honest.
All right. Yeah. Keeping honest. Oh, jeez. It's so much easier to live in image and mask up. Please. Thank you.
I know.
And that's the thing I hate. That's why I know I have to do this.
Yeah. Yeah. But I challenge you to think about the people that you gravitate most in your life. And it isn't for everyone, but the people that you gravitate to most in your life, are they image conscious or are they honest?
I hate image conscious people. Isn't
So,
that hilarious?
Yeah.
That's why I say it out loud, because it's like the thing, it's the thing in me that I think I like the least. It's difficult reading like about the three, and I get this like check in my spirit, like, that's ugly. That's so ugly. Oh gosh, I wish I wasn't like that,
So
and then I
funny.
realize I am, and maybe that's why I think some of their numbers are prettier. They just look better.
Yeah.
A 9 is more attractive, I think, on the outside.
You think so?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
More acceptable.
Yeah.
So, but that's the 4 in me, I suppose.
Maybe. Yeah. Yeah. There's some good stuff to dig into there. Yeah.
Thank you for
Thanks
having
for
this conversation.
Thanks for inviting me.
I love you.
I love you. I love you.
You'll have to come back, obviously.
That'll be fun.
Yeah, it will. All right.
fun.
Well, Melina and Erin, we're out.